It's been a whirlwind at ICSC Las Vegas this year, but it's coming to the close of our time here. And to kind of close it out, I'm sitting down with a colleague, a leader in our retail business, who's been talking with retail leaders quite a bit, a lot more than I do. He's one of the most plugged in people I know. So I want to zoom out and take a look at the big picture around retail and real estate with Naveen Jaggi, President of Retail Advisory Services for the Americas at JLL. Live from Las Vegas, it's Where We Buy. That's right, you're listening to Where We Buy. It's the show where we talk with retail experts and we visit the places where we buy. My name is James Cook.
And I'm Keisha Virtue.
And we both research retail and real estate for JLL. And like I said, we're live at the JLL booth at ICSC Las Vegas 2026. Welcome, Naveen Jaggi.
Thrilled to be here again, James. Thanks, Keisha.
So, Naveen, you've been in the whirlwind of whirlwinds. You managed somehow to attend two events simultaneously.
Yeah.
Because we've got ICSC here, and then concurrently, there's the JLL Elevate.
Correct, which is our national recognition one-time-a-year event.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So how do you do two events at once in different cities?
Probably a little bit of energy drink along the way, and then just power through, because I know when I get home late tonight, about 9 o'clock, I will probably not work the next couple of days because I'll have to recover after being here since Saturday.
That's right.
Now on the plus side, the other event was in Phoenix, which is
right.
like a
a
half an hour?
42-minute flight.
All right, you know it well.
Yeah. Yeah, wheels up to wheels down, 42 minutes.
But you were still you were completely present at this event. Like I've
Absolutely.
seen you around a lot.
Yeah.
I was here till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, then got over to LAS, got on a 3:30 flight, landed in Phoenix at 4:30, and I was at the Kierland Commons by 5, and I was on stage at 6.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
This is a little bit of an inside baseball question,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
we've got a big retail leasing business, one of the biggest in the world.
Yes.
So you get visibility on what overall the retail leasing business is like.
Yes.
Is retail leasing up, down? What are retailers doing right now? What are you
All
seeing?
right, so there's great question, because that's been a hot topic all weekend and into the ICSC weekdays, was what's the temperature of leasing activity? So a couple of ways to look at it. Last couple of years, deal velocity has been flat or slightly down year over year, and yet deal revenue has been up year over year. So the first big takeaway, that shouldn't surprise us when we actually think about it, is that with a scarcity of supply across the country in all the major markets, urban and suburban, the deals are shorter to find. It takes a lot longer to find those deals, and there's not that many of them. So you're working on better deals in better markets with better clients. Only the well-capitalized retailers and the best capitalized owners can make those deals come to fruition. So these deals are taking longer, but they're happening. And when they're happening at a higher rate. Now, we've known last couple of years that rents were going up, right? We heard plenty of stories about an empty Bed Bath & Beyond that went out on an original term at $12 a square foot, and that landlord recaptured that space, and he's released it for 20, 22, 23. That's a significant rent increase. We've heard those stories. Well, that just starts to flow through the brokerage world. So we see the benefit of that activity. So on the one hand, transaction volume is slower, but the value of those transactions is higher, which actually means you're working smarter and you're working better, which is what we would expect all of our professionals to do.
So fewer deals, higher value on each individual deal.
Correct.
Is there the market is so tight.
Yeah.
Is there any space out there that you can't lease? Like, it's got to be pretty bad, right?
I mean, it got to the point where I started hearing about how various companies, there's been a number of companies mentioned that are actually investing in C malls, like they're buying C malls, right?
Yeah.
Which was kind of a thought that those were going to be closed down 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And today, because of the shortage of space, the question is, how many of those C malls actually have a real life, not as a classic old mall, the classic mall of the 70s and 80s from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Not that mall, right? But a new mall that has power tenants, Container Store, Crate and Barrel, a Trader Joe's, a Dick's Sporting Goods. You didn't see those in malls 10 years ago, did we? Now we're hearing more and more of that kind of tenant moving into a Class C mall or a Class B mall. I think there's a future in the world now where tenant activity in a Class C mall will start to uptick because we're going so long with fresh development. And look, some of those C malls are in pretty good markets. They're just deteriorating assets. But can you repurpose those to be an inside-out power center mall? I think that's the question our tenants are dealing with because they know we have a shortage of supply. And there are some believers, including myself, we likely won't see new development at scale for the next 3 to 4 years at least. And if you start developing in the next 3 or 4 years, those won't come to the market for another 5 to 6 years. Well, what's going to replace that demand? Maybe that B and C mall that was not that favorable 2 or 3 years ago.
We've been hearing that the mall is dead for the past 2 decades, right, Naveen?
Yes.
And it just hasn't panned out. I think there's just so much that can be done with malls, so much opportunity, as you've said, even redeveloping and adding interesting, exciting new tenants. So really, really happy to hear that the activity is picking up.
I think owners start to see malls as not just fortress real estate, but they're seeing them as opportunities. We all saw through your entertainment report that is a big demand for entertainment concepts. The lack of space in traditional retail for entertainment concepts becomes potentially a boon for some of these malls.
Exactly.
And so I think don't give up on the C mall. I think there's a place for them in the future.
Yeah, we just released a report where we found 16.5, did I get right?
Yeah, 16.5.
16.5 million square feet of entertainment concepts expanding in U.S. and Canada. So, Naveen, we are but merely lowly podcasters, but I see you on TV all the time getting interviewed on the different networks.
Right.
They're probably asking you about the consumer a lot.
They are, yeah.
What do you say?
I'm concerned about the consumer from multiple standpoints, right? So, first of all, at the 36,000 foot level, I don't believe that a K economy is a healthy sign of a broad health, right?
Yes,
to me,
yes.
depending on who you believe from a statistical standpoint, 10% of the economy, right? The top 10% homeowners represent 50% of spend. The top 20% of income earners represent 65% of the spend. That's not healthy. That's not a broad-based healthy economy. So that tells me that if we continue this inflationary environment, we're going to see further deterioration in the middle market retailers, and we're going to see the further push of those middle market consumers moving all the way to the value discount sector almost permanently, right? So they may shop at Aldi occasionally. They may shop at a Dollar General occasionally. They may stop at a Costco occasionally. If we have an inflation environment like this, it continues, and the wages are flattened, as we know. So we have increased inflation, wages are flattened. I see a consumer that says to themselves, why would I go to a middle market retailer, a legacy retailer, when I need to get my dollar stretched? The idea now of getting as much in your $100 basket spend is probably more important today than it was 12 months ago. I think that's going to continue on. And if that does continue on, James, I think for me, that's my biggest concern. And that's what everyone wants to understand. Where is the consumer today?
Yeah.
The consumer today, I think, is much more stressed out than they're willing to admit.
Yeah. Yeah, and like we explained it in our entertainment report, it seems weird if the consumer's stressed out, why is entertainment expanding? Mm-hmm. But the thing is, they're now not going on big vacations.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so they're saving money that way. So they have a little bit extra to spend. And that's the opportunity for the entertainment concepts. But to your point, it's overall not good that they have less money to spend.
That is right. And I think the entertainment report that you did said one big important thing. If you look at the U.S. consumer, and we know that they're traveling less, we've seen plenty of tourism reports about the fact that U.S. consumers aren't going to go to Europe like they have in the past, as an example. They're going to stay. We also know that going to Disney is far more expensive than it used to be. Mm-hmm. And that can apply for Disney World, Disneyland, Universal Studios.
All of them, yeah.
Dollywood, all of those things.
Now, how often do you go to Dollywood, Naveen? You big
I have not been.
Shocked, but I'm shocked.
But I'm speaking out of what I've heard anecdotally. So all of these places are more expensive. So what are they going to need? They need to stay home, and they need the next Discovery Zone.
Yep.
They need the next Chuck E. Cheese, the next compelling entertainment experience. And I think that's a big opportunity for many landlords to be thinking about.
What's the concept near you in Houston that you filmed a video at? Color
Factory.
Okay.
So Color Factory is a really unique concept. They have basically 9 or 10 different rooms that have lots of features in the rooms where you can play. It's very much an Instagrammable place, right? So it's kind of got one room with balloons in it, one with big balls in it. So places where you would go in, take pictures. It's a place where you take corporate events to, but it's just different, right? And there's a place in Houston called Holy Moly. Again,
Yeah.
this is a cool concept out of Australia, and it's about 5 minutes from my house, so I've driven by there a number of times. On the weekends, it's packed. People need something other than the conventional Dave and Buster's from the 90s to go through, and this is what Holy Moly does.
So, in your conversations over the past 3 days, I'm sorry, has anything surprised you? Has anybody said something you're like, oh, wow, that's different? And sometimes you run into it where you start to hear the same things repeated.
So I was talking to my good colleague Keisha a while ago about this term that I am using for what I've heard for the last few days, which is irrational exuberance.
Okay.
Okay? And the reason why I'm using that peg term right now is that all the things we hear would make you think that there's something to be worried about, right? Consumer index, confidence index is low, right? Inflation is up. There's a war. Gas prices are up. So not only is inflation up, but gas pricing as a part of that is up, right? Those are all areas of concern. You would think that the consumer should be stressed out. Yet when we're at ICSC, we're not walking around consumers. Yeah, we are all consumers, right, James?
It's true.
But we're walking around talking to property owners and retailers. And remember, retailers are not talking about today. Retail real estate people are talking about 28, getting a pipeline for 28, and their pipeline for 29. It's a different world for them. So they don't necessarily have the pulse of what's happening from the consumer standpoint today. If you talk to the REITs and the owners, as I said a while ago, they're 97% full. They're seeing rents jump up 30, 40, 50% when they have a vacancy. They're in a great mood, but they're not talking to the consumer either. If you talk to the consumer, which is our business, by the way, is to talk to the consumer, it's a different story. That's why I call it irrational exuberance. What we hear here and what we're listening to here is not necessarily what's being said on the street by the everyday shopper.
Yeah, it is a selective group of a certain type of individual.
Almost a cocoon here.
I know, a little bit. We got to burst out of that bubble. Keisha runs consumer surveys, and that's one of the ways that we burst out of the bubble, and oftentimes we learn a lot from those.
Exactly. I was taking a sneak peek at the latest census sales, and I was really surprised to see that it was nominally up, even taking out gas prices. It was still up. And I was looking at the categories. I'm like, okay, yeah, grocery up, F&B places up, sporting goods up, electronics up. I think a lot of people are maybe buying forward. They're using their tax refunds to go ahead and make those purchases now in the event that inflation goes even higher in the next couple of months. And maybe we're starting to see some trickling in of back to school purchases as well ahead of time. That's something we'll find out in a month or so when we release our back to school report. But I'm really interested to really see where spending goes for the next couple of months. And as you said, I mean, the consumer we're at a really low peak point in consumer sentiment. So well, we've been here before. We have. The thing with retail real estate, we have to realize is it's cyclical. We went there 2008. This is something that will pass eventually. So I think we do, as people in the business, we do need to look forward. We do need to figure out what's actually going well, what's working. And yes, it is definitely not ideal that the upper income consumers are pushing all the spending, but it's good that they're spending. So, and we do have that very, very strong element of value that's really, really being aggressive with their expansion. So what do you have to say to that, Naveen?
So I think we got to recognize a few things. I think like the era of consumption has never abated here in the United States, right? This long 100-year journey from when the credit card was established by General Motors to be able to, or Ford to buy a car. How did they actually sell cars? They started a credit card company, and they sold the credit card company as a way to buy a car. From that moment on, we became a credit consumer. That's not going to change, right? And we know that based on your research and other things we've read, credit card debt is as highest level by the consumer. So why is the consumer continuing to spend? I think in the moment they're spending for essential needs. We know the travel spend is down as an example, right?
Yeah.
So that is discretionary spend. Discretionary spend goes towards what? Sporting good items make sense. Your kids playing sports. We know as families, you don't cut down on the things your kids need.
Yeah.
They get the clothes and the baseball bats and all the things they need for sports, but they may not take a big trip. And they may not take big dinner events, and they may not go do the big things that people, buying a car, buying a home, we know those sales are down,
Yeah.
right? And so when you don't buy a house, as an example, you have money left over to maybe go and get a TV, maybe upgrade some of the things in your home. So those things are, to me, underscoring your electronics number. I'm not surprised by that. On the other hand, you didn't say anything about home furnishings.
Exactly.
That home furnishings aren't doing well right now, right? To me, that's a direct correlation to home sales. It's one thing to buy a TV. It's a whole other thing to buy couches and tables and chairs and those kinds of things. And that's why, to me, that one sector is feeling the long-term pressure of the housing sales being compressed or depressed at the moment. So wrapping all that up, James, Keisha, I feel right now that if we close out the war in Iran in the near term, that to me is the first sign that we can get back to some sense of fiscal stability in the sake of the consumer's eye. Because the first thing they notice as a consumer from the war standpoint is what? Gas prices.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They feel that every day. They notice that, right? So if gas prices start to come down the next few months when the war hopefully is settled, I think consumer starts going, oh, I can breathe now, right?
Yeah.
I went and got a tank full of gas last week or 2 weeks ago. It went up 20% for me in 4 weeks,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like that's real for the consumer. If
Yes.
that comes back in the next couple of months, consumer will breathe a little bit easier. But as we know from other things, there's a number of things that are still on the high side that need to come down for the consumer to feel overall healthy. And let's not forget one last piece before I go let you go on this one. It's also election time in November.
Yeah.
Consumers tend to be very conservative during election periods. So I watched the consumer this summer on their back to school sales, Keisha. Your back to school survey will be really interesting as a look into the fall, because we'll have the election in November, which will tell us how calm or unstable the environment's going to be post-November elections.
Yeah. Unfortunately, whatever the result, half of America won't like
That's
it.
right. Is it
But
51% or 49%?
But
Yeah.
it is, whatever it is a result, and we move on.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's the uncertainty that's
It
the
is.
biggest problem. Okay, so Naveen, with all the meetings you've done
Yeah.
and all the traveling back and forth,
Yes.
what would you say your takeaway is? What are you most optimistic about going forward in the next year or so?
I've said this for quite a few years, and the consumer continues to shock me time and time again. They're super resilient. We've talked about the resilient consumer and the resilient consumer post-pandemic. Let's not forget the term resilient consumer has really become a buzzword over the last 3 years. We didn't really talk about consumer resiliency in 2018. That wasn't a term. It was just the consumer was just continuing on what they were doing. But post-pandemic, with all the ups and downs, interest rates as an example, inflation as an example, our consumer was pretty steady Eddie, right? So to me, the thing that strikes me most is that when all these conversations happen, whether it was with the press or with the REITs or retailers, there's a steady narrative. Our consumers continue to find ways to get what they need, not necessarily what they want, but get what they need, and they will come in and buy as often as they need to get what they need. And as long as they get what they need at a fair price, the consumer will continue to shop. And that's what I heard most often. Whether it's grocery, mass merchandise, mass merchants, they all said the same thing. Sales are fine.
Overall number of new stores, like what we call open to buy,
Yeah.
like out looking to open new stores. Biggest still value, QSR,
Yeah.
a little bit of luxury.
Yeah, a little bit of grocery
Yeah.
too, of course, with it.
You know,
all the
value slash discount is now and likely will be for the forever future. It feels like anyway, near future, the dominant category for growth, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we just saw recently that Dollar Tree, which is out of bankruptcy, has announced they're going to open up 300 new stores. I mean, they're doing that because they know there's a demand out there for value and stretching a dollar. Otherwise, they wouldn't say it.
You have your finger on the pulse of what's hot and new in retail. So can you give us a sneak peek as to some of the hot new retailers that you know about?
I will tell you that I won't say them by name because that's probably unfair.
Yeah, okay.
But I'll tell you a category that
Okay.
I would ask all of us to watch out for. I saw it firsthand when I was in Asia about a month and a half ago. But the amount of Korean retailers
Oh my gosh.
that are in the health and beauty aid
Yeah.
category, and especially the cosmetic sector, blew me away. And what blew me away about them was their execution. And secondly was the number of young female Koreans in these stores that were buying bags of things. They weren't buying onesies and twosies. They were buying bags of things. We've seen that kind of conversation happening in the U.S. We've seen, especially on the West Coast, a number of Asian and Japanese retailers already expand here. We certainly see Minoso and others. Unido's, of course, a legacy brand by now. So if there's one thing I'm going to ask all of us to pay attention to Korean and Asian retailers in the U.S. in the cosmetics and the F&B and the entertainment sector over the next 3 years. You'll be surprised when you dig in at how great they are at execution and value.
I think that's a great hot tip for anybody who's not digging into that. I mean, you just start discovering all this cool new stuff. So you mentioned traveling to Asia. I'm always hearing about you being in Europe or India or Asia. How do retail markets in some of those other countries compare to what you know in the U.S.?
So I think the USA, broadly speaking, is the best at what retailing is all about. And I mean, I want to qualify that. I was talking to someone from the UK yesterday, and they're making the comment about the fact that the idea of an open-air lifestyle center like Kierland Commons doesn't exist in the UK. It doesn't exist. They either have the villages with their streets or they have high street, but they don't have these curated, beautifully built, beautifully designed, beautifully managed assets that bring in office, hospitality, and retail together. So as a result, broadly speaking, the USA still does the best at bringing the most complex retail mixed-use projects to life. We do it best. However, I do believe that when it comes to merchandising and execution of retail on the high street, when it comes to merchandising, Tokyo has it. Tokyo has it. They do it with their window works. They do it with their mannequins. They do it with so many different ways that they display their product. And it's engaging. And I was in the Ginza about a month ago, and I walked past the Uniqlo, an 8-story Uniqlo building. And I stopped. And I looked at it across the street. There was about 100 people around me of all nationalities, all with their cameras on, all videoing the Uniqlo. It's just a retail store. But here's what they did. They had 8 stories, and every story from the first story, not the ground floor, first story up, had mannequins. And those mannequins were rotating. And those mannequins were by gender, one floor male, next floor female, and they were displaying their product. So one level had kind of athleisure, one had fast fashion by different colors. And you just sat there and you were mesmerized by every floor showing different colors and different styles. So to me, Tokyo, great retail execution. USA, great at mixed-use lifestyle retail presentation. When you go to the other parts of the world, and I've been to China, I've been to India, much of the retailing when you get off the main street is still very localized. It's still very much driven towards the market that has a 5-minute walk, a 10-minute walk. They haven't gone to the level that we have, which is, to me, much more car and automobile-driven consumerism, whereas in many cities in Europe, many cities in Asia, still foot traffic that drives a lot of that consumerism. That, to me, is the big distinction. You don't see big parking lots in India. You don't see big parking lots in China. You don't see big parking lots in Europe. You see big parking lots in the USA.
Yeah, that density, you know, in a place like, especially like in Asia, like in Seoul and Tokyo, the density there, it's just incredible. It's a place where you could have, you know, multiple quick service restaurants right next to each other, all doing, they could be direct competitors. You could probably have the same store down the street from it, and they'll both do gangbusters business because there's just so many people there all looking to shop and buy food and stuff.
I saw in Korea, in Seoul, I saw the same brand of cosmetic and facial cream store. I saw them across the street from each other every block. They've cornered the market, and they're going to own it, and they covered all up and down the street. They did a great job. I'm so impressed by them.
That's awesome.
Do you have a favorite metric that's completely off the wall, not what we usually take a look at, that says to you, okay, this really tells us what's happening in retail?
Sales per square foot is kind of a given. But I think we have so much more data now, right? And to me, the data that I like when I can get it is 2 things. It's the dwell time per storefront.
That's always
to me,
good.
dwell time, I love that because it tells me that whatever they did in that store was engaging. Because once you get their attention, they're going to come in, right? So dwell time at the front of the store, right? That's the first thing. And then the capture rate inside on basket. Like, what are they converting? Their spend. When they walk in the store, there's a high possibility they're going to spend, okay? I want to understand the composition of their basket. And what you get from retailers oftentimes is, which we've gotten is the composition of the basket is that for every $100 spend, it may used to be 10 items and now it's 12 items. It used to be 14 items and now it's 6 items. that tells you what the consumer's thinking. Are they trying to make their dollar stretch by buying 14 things where they bought 10 things last time? Or are they moving to an aspirational shopping habit once a month? Now they come in and bought 4 things. They went to Abercrombie, they went to American Eagle, they went to Tory Burch, they bought some nice things. So the two items I like to call it, whether it's metrics or not, really is the dwell time of the consumer outside the window, which we can get through Placer and other services, and then the dwell time inside the store. Everything else kind of follows.
Yeah.
Dwell time is, to me, the important element of this whole journey by the consumer.
Yeah. If you're not dwelling, you're not selling.
Ooh,
Somebody must have
I
said
like
that
that.
before, right?
Maybe it needs a patent.
Wow.
I think that's
If
wonderful.
you're not
Just make-
dwelling, you're not selling.
Yeah.
Good gosh. That was great.
Our motto for next year.
All right. Well, Naveen, we're winding down at ICSC Las Vegas 2026. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been fun to catch up.
James, it's always great to be here. I love what you do. Keisha, you're amazing at this podcast. And you know what? Whenever you call and invite me, I'm there.
All right. Well, you're our returning guest. I don't know. You know how on Saturday Night Live, you go long enough times you get the jacket or whatever?
yeah.
We need to get your jacket.
I need a jacket.
Yeah.
I may not be Will Ferrell level or Steve Martin level, but I'll get there.
And if you want to hear more interviews and retail insights, you can subscribe to Where We Buy on the iPhone podcast app or on Spotify. Wherever you get your podcast, just search for Where We Buy, and we are there. And we're on the web at wherewebuy.show. And that is a wrap. Thank you,
Awesome.
Naveen.
Thanks, James. Thanks, Keisha.
Thanks.